Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be upon you. Peace and the mercy and the blessing of God be upon you. Welcome to the fall ISJIE event of the Islam Social Justice and Interreligious Engagement Program here at Union. Some of you joined us last March for our launch event, so you will know that this is a relatively new endeavor. We are incredibly excited to have you and also to have Dr. Moja Koff here visiting with us and sharing with us. I will invoke a little bit of my directorial privilege and say that I find her work to be somewhat of a muse for me in my theological rethinking of the tradition. It is inspiring, it is challenging, it is provocative in all of the wonderful yet hard ways. So we are very thankful that she has agreed to come here and join us. I'm going to take a few minutes at the top of our program today to just introduce you to ISJIE a little bit, and then also tell you about some exciting things that we have coming up in the near future. Then I will introduce Dr. Koff. She will then do a performance of some of her poetry and prose, and then we will have time for conversation, and then after that we have refreshments and snacks and informal mingling and conversations of that sort. Okay? So let me tell you a little bit about ISJIE. My name is Dr. Jerusha Lamte, and I am the Assistant Professor of Islam and Ministry here. I teach in the fields of interreligious engagement and Islam and feminist theology. I also direct the Islam Social Justice and Interreligious Engagement Program. Some of you may already know, but just for those of you who don't, the Islam Social Justice and Interreligious Engagement Program is funded by the Luce Foundation and by the International Institute of Islamic Thought in Virginia. It is a joint partnership of both of those funders. We have two main things that we do. One thing we do is academic programs, so we have degree programs and classes here at Union around the themes that are part of this program. And then the other side is a series of public education things. Such as tonight, we have fall events, big events. We also have a faculty cohort that brings together scholars that either teach Islamic studies or are interested in teaching Islamic studies and interested primarily in the discourse of Islam in the public square. So these faculty come together from Columbia and NYU and a bunch of different local universities to talk about what it means to be a professor of Islamic studies who is called upon to talk in the public discourse about Islam on a routine basis. We also have an advisory council and another program which is very exciting, which will launch in January, which is the Muslim Women's Leaders Program, which will be a cohort of Muslim women leaders who come together here at Union in January to build a community of conversation, but also to think about how women's leadership within the Muslim community is shaped by tradition, is impacted by public engagement, and also can perhaps be enhanced through building networks of solidarity across communities. So with that, those are the basic things we do. I should make one further point. We have a very unwieldy title. It's the Islam Social Justice and Interreligious Engagement Program, intentionally unwieldy in a way, because it captures exactly what we do. The motivation of this program was to serve as an incubator for thought within the Islamic tradition on pressing social justice issues, but to do that not in a silo, to do that in explicit and organic and from the ground up conversation with other traditions, so that we could learn together, build solidarity together around a series of issues. Those issues include gender, sexuality, incarceration, poverty, race, climate change. And so that's what the hope and aspiration of ISJIE is. I just want to show you a few things before we go into the best part of the evening. There are a few copies of Dr. Koff's most recent book called Hagar Poems in the back. They're for sale either by check or $70 cash, exact change, I think, unless you get lucky and get back there and there's some change. Obviously, it's also available online. There also are pins and some informational materials about ISJIE back there, as well as a flyer for the Muslim Women Leaders Program, if you're interested. This program, the application is opening on the 1st of October. So if you're interested or you know people who are, please alert them to that fact. Now we get to the good stuff, okay? Born in Syria, Dr. Mojakov has taught literature and Middle East studies at the University of Arkansas for over 20 years. She is a member of the Syrian Nonviolence Movement, which was formed inside Syria in April 2011 by activists of the nonviolent protest movement. Her PhD in comparative literature, earned in 1994, is from Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. Koff's books include the novel, The Girl in the Tangerine Scarf, and if you have not read it, you should read it. It is a wonderful weaving of complex identity. I think we have an expert in the room, well, two experts on that book, one the author and one a student and scholar of that book. And the poetry book, Emails from Scheherazade, and her new book, as I showed you, Hagar Poems. This new book treats the story of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar that is common in the three major religious traditions. And those of you who know her work will know that she is the author of such things as Hagar writes a cathartic letter to Sarah on the request of her therapist. I mean, come on now, people. So let's warmly welcome her and sit back and enjoy her presence. Thank you all for being here.
You are so kind to have me. Thank you, and thank you to Dr. Lamptey and Elai Said, and to ISJIE and to Union for having me here, and thank you to the cleaning staff, and thank you to the IT staff and all the staff at Landmark Guest Suites for hosting us too. وإذ قال موسى لفتاه لا أبرح حتى أبلغ مجمع البحرين أو أمضي حقبا فلما بلغا مجمع بينهما نسيا حوتهما فاتخذ سبيله في البحر سربا. I will not give up until I find the junction of the two seas or spend ages in travel. But when they reached the junction, they forgot their fish, which took its course through the sea as through a tunnel. That is from the Quran, the cave, or 19. Surah 19, and it's a Moses poem, although it's from the book called the Hagar Poems. I am ready to stop hovering at the meeting of the two seas. I am ready to cut through the waters with my clean body and swim after the red fish. I followed the directions they gave me in the city, but I have not found the way, nor have I met the wise one supposed to guide me in the wild. When will the great fish surface? Tell her I am at the fork in the waters, ready to grasp the fin and swim into the turquoise life. I have been living under a sky lower than the real sky. No wonder I am stooped. No wonder it hurts to stretch straight and dive. This is the land I know. Mean huts, harsh but sheltering. Outside them are fears, thick as trees, and doubts that litter the ground to trip my feet. What if this unripe persimmon is the only fruit we're meant to eat? The world is tender under today's sky. I want to learn how to brush my skin against its skin. I am laying my clothes on the rock now. Am I naked enough yet? The first breath in water hurts the lungs. Where are you, teacher? Are you almost here? And what if I'm wrong again? What if there are no rubied caverns under sea? Where is that no-show guide? I shiver, doubt, pull my clothes back on, half fastened, awry. Here I am at the estuary of the two waters, pacing from tree to stunted tree, looking for the sign of a great fish and not seeing what I see. And this one is an ISJIE poem. Anyone know who ISJIE is? Yes, the wife of Pharaoh, the surrogate mother of Moses. وضرب الله مثلا للذين آمنوا امرأة فرعون إذ قالت رب ابن لي عندك بيتا في الجنة ونجني من فرعون وعمله ونجني من القوم الظالمين. And that is the prayer of ISJIE. And in English it is, O my Lord, build for me a house near you in the garden and save me from Pharaoh and his doings and save me from a people who oppress. These chariot horses are flying away from me. The world hurtles by at frightening speed. Bodies explode in mid-air. Pyramids come crashing down into dust. Children are deliberately slaughtered. Homes with people living in them are purposely demolished. Men are blindfolded, leashed in the name of freedom. People use the altars of the gods to pray for killing. I don't understand this world. I want to build myself a house in another sort of world. I wake from one of my nightmares. Pharaoh says, "Why are you screaming? You have everything you ever wanted." Then he laughs and turns into a river of blood, a snake crawling up my thigh. The nightmare isn't over. The priests pray loudly for victory. They turn into frogs. They make disgusting noises. They look at me warily. The scholars and the teachers explain why I am wrong according to the laws everybody knows. The newspapers call me a crazy woman, a traitor, an apologist for terrorists, a lesbian, a feminist, an anarchist, an advocate for every brand of depravity. But it's Pharaoh who's crazy. It's the gods that accept libations for murder who are crazy. It's this upside down order of yours that's a danger to human life. I can't live in it anymore. Got to hold on to these snorting horses. Got to get the reins back or they will break my neck. I'm going over, but not because I'm crazy. And this is a Fatima poem from the Hagar poems book, Our Lady of the Sorrows. It is hard to find Fatima. Fatima's face is always averted from the crowd. Fatima's form, wrapped in its black cloak, is always receding to another place. Did she carry in her pelvic floor the knowledge that her son Hussein would die at Karbala, his body gored? My lady of the sorrows of the shroud. Girl of 10, anxious for her hounded father, her pinched face peering right and left, picking through Mecca's crooked streets among the sweaty backs of men the day has made unmindful, forlorn, bereft, little mother, even as a little daughter. She appears at Trayvon's killer's trial, shadows the crowd at Ferguson, Fatima shuddering, shouldering the pain of every mother's son who will be slaughtered. So I figure I better read some Hagar, actual Hagar. So this is one of the more conciliatory Hagar poems. There are some poems where she uses some language. You know, her therapist does suggest catharsis and stuff. But I almost wanted to read that one, but I don't know. I'm chickening out right now. All right, I'll read them back to back. And then you see that the whole comes together in a more healing way, but she does have to go through the, all right, here we go. Sarah, you bitch. This one is called Page Found Crumpled in the Wastebasket by Hajar's Writing Desk. So she decides against sending this one, I'm just saying. Sarah, you bitch, you backstabbing woman, trotting after your husband, pinning the curtain up in the mosque, blindsiding other women, smacking the bad girls on the hand, saying, oh no, sir, we're not like them. We don't want the Oh, no, sir, we don't want the ERA. Oh, no, brother, we don't want to pray in the mosque. Oh, no, sir, we don't want equality. That would go against God and nature. That would go against the law and the prophet. That would lead straight to permissive sex, illicit drugs, immorality, and the ruination of families, you mealy-mouthed bitch. You house Negro of womankind. You gutless, spineless, toothless, truthless, partial birth abortion of a woman. You dried up old. And then she goes. I should have read that one on a page, because when I do that, I forgot. When I read it on a page, then I actually just crumple it up for the ending. All right. This one is called Kin. Sarah, you massaged my sacrum with a tennis ball when I was in labor. Like a priestess of the body, you wiped the newborn Ismail clean of birth blood and whispered first holy words into his ear. You are his mother, too. We are kin. No decrees of God or man can make this truer than it is, nor can it be cloven. We did not begin with the husband we shared, but in Egypt, with divine intelligence arrowed from eye to eye, across a patio of pagan strangers, when I was royalty and you were trembling in the house. You knew exile and I knew exile. You suffered and I suffered. Like matter, kinship can be changed but not destroyed. Cruelty tarnishes but cannot dissolve it. We are kin from bread baked together, salted, broken, eaten, sacred as challah bread at sunset on the night of power. From the battering waters of the sea we crossed, from the tree of life whose branches we burned to stay alive. Kin we are from knowledge of the name. You had the first letters, I had the last, and putting them together we spelled out the secret. Thank you. I guess I'm going to read one from Sarah's diary. This is from Sarah's Egypt diary. I see now. Either I play the little woman shrunk to fit the sister when convenient. For that price, I get a stunted sort of love and safety, which is not the same as heart serenity, or free in my body and my mind, I leave Ibrahim open to attack from tribes who'd pen us for the kill. The tyrant king, even our own community, where some would say, my husband's not a man for not controlling me. Either way, I lose. But I refuse. You are cheats, your bargains frauds, your scales are weighted, you who profit by this power. I refuse to buy and sell. I refuse to trade with you. I have a little Syria set. And it starts out with, our name is blood. Because for decades, Syria was a black hole in the minds of people down my street. I had to make jokes about serial killers or cornflakes to get across the name of the country, of my first words, and the world's first alphabet at Ugarit. Seriously. Today, Syria killer is no joke, and Syrians bleed across all my neighbors' screens. The world knows us now, but only by blood. Blood like a family's limbs blown apart by barrel bomb, the kind Assad keeps dropping, but only on civilian apartment buildings because its canister cannot target tactically. And now you know the phrase barrel bomb. Once again, Syrians enrich the world semantically. I kind of just made this decision very shortly ago. It's just an articulation of something that I have articulated in many different ways all along, and now I've just kind of figured out to explicitly spell this out. So my decision is that I just will not engage in any conversation about Syria that, for example, begins with the words Russia or U.S. or I will only discuss Syria in a manner that centers Syrian voices, Syrian agencies. So if you begin from Rima Dali or Adra prison or Hamza Khatib or Ghiath Matar or the Green Ribbon Girls or Kishmelik, the Checkmate organization founded in Aleppo, or the LCCs, or Yasin al-Hajj Saleh, or Razan Ghazawi, or Mazen Darwish, or Samira Khalil, or the women of Salamiyya, or Zaina Shahla, or Hanadi Zaghlout. I won't go on and on. Or Khawla Dunya, or Hala Muhammad. You know, and if you haven't, I feel like telling people, like, if you don't know any of those names, don't talk about Syria. And if you want to talk about Syria, know those names. Or many other names. You know, they don't have to be those exact names, but know the names and the voices and the groups and the organizations founded by the Syrians who have agency over their own movement and over their own country and over their own revolution. So I don't know, I have a whole, don't know how many Syrian poems you can take, but here we go. So I have a whole set of Syrian poems. This one is the Fallen Protesters song. And it's dedicated to R.I.P. Ghiath Matar. He died of torture on September 9, 2011 in the security prisons of Assad. And his name in Arabic, anybody here know what Ghiath means in Arabic? Deliverance. And what is Matar? Anybody taking any Arabic? Rain. So in a sense, his name kind of means deliverance, rain. This poem is not biographically necessarily about him, except that he did die under torture, but it's to him. These last few days were the most beautiful I ever lived, my friends. For the first time in our lives spent under martial law, we took the secret freedom we'd been eating out of the hidden cupboard and ate it openly. Then we took it right outside like melting ice cream and started giving it away to anyone. After that, we were free. I don't know how to explain to those who haven't tasted it. Imagine an entire country with a calcium deficiency, long term, and everybody shrinks, but no one notices. People smelled the free on us like wind on a horse and loved us, gave us secret bits of their food wrapped in warm bread, beginning to free themselves so that one day the inside and the outside of people will no longer be split, bloody, trembling down the middle like I was by the bullet spray of soldiers sent to shoot us, then by the state's torture doctors. They cut my insides out, trying to find the freedom and extract it surgically. That's what they do, those who have lost half their humanity. Try to make half humans out of everyone. My friends, you are heaving a giant iron shelf off the limbs of people whose bones it crushes. Soon it will yield to the weight of all your shoulders. Remember me when that happens. We worked for it together. You were as ready to die for it as I was, but it happened to be me. So when you write a word on a wall for all to see, and it doesn't have to be in code, and no one breaks the hand that drew it, when freedom is no longer treated like a narcotic, dosed in hidden little baggies only for the few, but becomes like photosynthesis in plants, processing light in every leaf, when everyone can be openly free, when freedom falls like a deliverance rain, then, my friends, remember me. It began with the teenagers writing on the walls. Anyway, this one is for the Free Syrians behind bars, and I changed the names in it from time to time. This is just one of the versions. Your shoulders hunched in prison cells tonight, you whose bodies are bound in rubber tires or hung by meat hooks for bludgeoning. You who are dragged to torture tables by your hair to sit with vertebrae force-arched beyond their stress points. May our love reach you tonight. May it come between the truncheon and your jawbone. May it weaken every jolt from cable taped to your flesh. When interrogators finish with you for the night, may you feel this balm we wipe on your skin, our love. Take my pillow, if I could send it. I've little use for it. I see your faces and my eyelids open. Tal, Yahya, Diya, Majd, Ziyad, Malak, Ghassan, Man, Rafah, Hazim, Guevara, Marwa, Tariq, Anas, Juwan, Shadi, Raji, Muhammad, Maaz, Imad, Bilal, Ali, Talal, Amir, Zain, Tahama, Osama, Yaqub, Hanna, Sham'un, and every other prisoner, especially those unlisted anywhere, snatched by dictatorship's police without a word reaching family. Do not think you are alone. You are not alone in that stone cell. We hear your voice, even if you can barely move your mouth. Do not think you are not powerful. You are the sinew and muscle of truth flexing. Hold on, my brothers, my sisters. You are precious to us. That loopy grin, your high-elbowed billiards shot, the thumb pad you lick before you deal the cards for trumps. You whisper to us even if you cannot move your lips. We hear you. Hold on. This one was written as kind of a letter or note to my friend Marvin X, one of the great figures of the Black Arts movement, and he has it up on his website, or some earlier version of it. Rivers of blood, no metaphor. Oh Marvin, how much blood can soak the earth? The angels asked God, will you create a species who will shed blood and overrun the earth with evil? And it turns out rivers of blood is no metaphor. See the stones of narrow alleys in Duma, shining with blood hissing from humans. Dark and dazzling, it keeps pouring and pumping from the inexhaustible flesh of Syrians, and neither regime barrel bombs from the air nor rebel car bombs on the ground ask Syrians their names before they die. They are mowed down like wheat stalks, and every stalk has 7 ears, and every ear 100 grains. They bleed like irrigation into the earth. Even one little girl in Idlib with her carotid artery cut, who knew she could be a river running all the way over the ocean to you, Marvin, and draining me of my heart? And God replied to the angels on creation day, I know what you know not. Cut the coyness, God. Read out the names of all the Syrians dying. See what your species has done. Sorry about that. Mic overload on the last. And the torture methods at the beginning of the prisoner poem are taken from real accounts and human rights agencies' descriptions and Syrian descriptions of the torture methods. All right, so we need a little bit of a change. I have a bunch. Okay, but we will. I have kind of a history of the beginning of the Syrian Revolution in poetry. Okay, wait, we're just going to go change to a love poem, okay? Change of scene here. This is also an audience participation poem. So you have a role, and here's your role. We'll rehearse it a little bit. So I'm going to say, I love a man, and then you're going to finish the sentence by saying, who washes my dishes. But there are other lines that begin with I love a man, so you're going to have to wait for 2 cues. I'm going to say, I love a man, and then I'm going to point to you to finish that sentence. So, I love a man. Who washes my dishes. All together now, one more time. I love a man. Who washes my dishes. Great, okay. Now, but there are times when I won't go like this, and then it's not yours, okay? I love a man who clears my table. I love a man who knows how to use a wire scouring brush on my pots till they sparkle so. He brings out my shine. I love a man who washes my dishes. I love a man who clears my table, who washes my dishes, making small soapy circles with his manly hands around the curves of my delicate glassware, sliding lathery down the slimmest stem. I love a man who washes my dishes. I love a man who moves patiently around my kitchen, turning like a deft spatula, remembering the places and purposes of every latch, knob, and cubby. I love a man who washes my dishes. I love a man who takes responsibility in the tired aftermath of a meal, down to the wiping of the last counter, chasing the last honeyed crumb into the moist corners of the basin, neatly grinding the coiled peel of the final tangerine. I love a man who washes my dishes. He is not afraid to descend into the maelstrom of the disposal and explore the sharp blades with naked fingers. I love a man who washes my dishes. I love a man who washes my dishes. Thank you. Good job. Good job, good job, good job. And so now that you're all warmed up, this is another audience participation poem. This is kind of a newbie one that I have tinkered into an audience participation, so I've never tried it before. So we're going to see how it goes. So your line here is much softer, but it's all together. You're going to say, simplify. So let's practice that. Simplify. Okay, so then your cues are simply going to be like hand gestures. Yeah, like I'm a conductor. So when I'm going to just ask for it and just go, and then you go simplify. So simplify. Perfect. Okay. This is called One Walnut Hemisphere. Did you know they were called hemispheres? was like on some cooking, reading some cooking thing or something, and the half of a walnut is called a hemisphere. Half a cigarette tastes like 4 at the end of a day, abstinent. 1 walnut hemisphere poured over with olive oil is almost too much. How could I have eaten such richness undizzied before? Okay, wait, I'm going to start this over. Hold on. Mess up. Okay, this is a Ramadan poem, and also I just read it without your parts in it. Okay, so about Ramadan, 1 hemisphere. All right, here we go. Half a cigarette tastes like 4 at the end of a day, abstinent. 1 walnut hemisphere poured over with olive oil is almost too much. How could I have eaten such richness undizzied before? A spoonful of tabbouleh grows to a banquet, a continent. Its mountains of chopped tomatoes, its parsley sprigs like trees. The abundance of everything shows. Thoreau gives the adhan. Simplify your life for the yearly paring of appetite under Ramadan's whittling knife. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was great. It worked out perfectly, except for my mess up at the beginning. And so in the Ramadan set, one more little Ramadan poem, just for fun. It's called Ramadan, Red, White, and Blue. So yeah, interreligious engagement. Ramadan in the West will put hair on your chest. No sleeping in, fool. Boss here won't invest in your Ramadan slouch. It's not your limp wrist Saudi soft Ramadan. It's Ramadan shaker school. It's Medina meet Sparta. Get your Abu Dhar on. No clutch of women kin cooking fancy frill foods. No shopping till dawn. No diners closed days, so temptations removed. You're dumbed down Muslim land. You're dumbed down old country. Muslim shortcuts don't play. This is Ramadan USA. Hardcore and hungry, the old prophet way. Because, yeah. Which reminds me, I'm going to read a Mary poem from the Hagar Poems book. This is called The Food of Mary. Because, so the little Quranic is it epithet or epigraph? Epigraph to this poem goes like this in English. It goes, because this was one of Mary's miracles. She was shut up in the temple and had her own private chamber with no access. And each time her teacher and mentor, Zechariah, entered her prayer chamber, he found her supplied with sustenance. He said, "O Mary, whence cometh this?" She said, "From God." That's from Quran 3, the family of Imran. After hours in my 7th floor municipal office, I am working on revisions to the drainage code, alone like Mary, high in her temple, staring at the blank blue screen that is my life. Mary tapping at the holy keyboard. God sent her fully microwavable meals with Alfredo sauce manifest. I bang on the candy machine down the hall. Nothing. It has eaten my paltry pieces of silver. Mary had a mentor in Zechariah who dropped in and taught her divine wisdom whenever he wasn't on a vow of silence, but only burnt out Bill from computer services, styrofoam cup loosely in hand with a little cold coffee in it, comes by my door to mutter about the weather. Mary got a visitation from Gabriel, which helped her clarify things like her task in life. I get the crosstown courier in bicycle shorts, panting, not so much to announce a virgin birth unto me, as carrying a roll of blueprints under his arm, which I study religiously while eating naught but stale chips and the linty lifesaver. The hour is late. My hunger groweth. Oh, Mary, Mary, whence cometh my divine crumb? So there, I guess I'm channeling my old Jersey girl. Yeah, from when I used to live across the river. I don't know what accent I'm doing now. I think sometimes something from Bob's Burgers or something. Okay, so this is my, I forgot to check time, but this is my closing poem. Is that good? Because I got more. But, okay, I forgot to set my timer. Okay. Because the poetry of the Syrian Revolution is quite a long, it's a 5-minute poem, probably 4 to 5 minutes. And if you want it, I could do it later in Q&A or something. But I'm going to go to my closing poem. And the epigraph here is from Abu al-Ala al-Ma'arri. And he is a fabulous 11th century Syrian poet who was blind, vegan, a skeptic, and a philosopher. Translated by Amin Rihani, travel lightly, for the mighty that have been might now be breathing in the dust unseen. Lightly, the violets beneath thy feet spring from the mole of some Arabian queen. The nape of every morning. Are you awake now? And what are the birds outside your window saying? And what the roots bursting from soil underfoot? Will you drink the sun today, exchange electrons with dinosaurs whose lost air we breathe through rock and atom where we shop? Each time we lift a foot, whether it comes down on ground or a gas pedal, 100,000 hands are underneath it, boosting our weight. Step lightly on their roots bursting from the soil underfoot. What garbage or good we throw down goes on and on through space and time and comes around inside the bodies of other sentient beings, and the signs have been left for us to read in rocks and trees. Do you sense your Neolithic mother in the breeze, how she ground wild herbs and for a pestle used the ordinary stone you kicked this morning unaware? Uncounted millions move among us, so step lively, live awake. The infant ancestor of the Mayan farmer, forebear of the Spaniard's great-granddaughter, whose half-Mandingan great-great-grandson gave you cheekbones. These and millions move within us, so let us step lightly and live awake. Someone's blood was poured into the mortar binding bricks to make the house we live in, make it safe. Can we make restitution? Can we pay a single debt? Hear the hoofbeat of winged horsemen in our veins. Our bodies are not ours. We eat the stars. We are the recycled matter of supernovas beginning or abating in the roots half buried in the soil underfoot. Nothing is still. And the birds who know both sky and soil, whose tiny hollow bones pick up as giant thumping the vibrations that we miss in the nape of every morning, call and call us. Be alert! Awake, 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 awake! Okay, so
let's thank Moja again for this wonderful. Thank you so much. So, let me see if this is.
I totally forgot to set my timer and I lost all sense of time.
It's perfect. It's wonderful. Okay, so I think this is on, and as I indicated at the beginning, I'm going to maybe ask a question or two, and then we're going to open up to the floor, and we will have microphones, and there are volunteers who will come around with the microphone. Since we are filming, I would ask you to stand up and also speak into the microphone for your question. So one of the things that I would like to ask, and as I said at the opening, I find your work so inspiring, especially in relation to the women that appear, and many different women appear tonight. But the particular aspect of it that I want to ask you about is that you have such a unique way of reclaiming their voices. So not just a descriptive way, but almost bringing forward to things that are tangible to us. So I just want to ask you, where does that come from? What inspires that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, like some of them in the Hagar poems is all about reclaiming women's voices, yeah? Although there are some Moses and some Abraham and some Ismail and Isaac poems in there. So some of them do it in like dragging them into the modern world, like Hagar writes a cathartic letter to Sarah on the advice of her therapist. And then some of them, like Kin, are more sort of set in the desert or, try to use the imagined setting of their historical, back in the mists of history, whenever time period. So they take a different approach, but yeah, because how can they not? Because what use are they to us if we can't reimagine them, right? And psychologize them into our own world. So what is it that those stories, and also, like, I have a friend, a very dear friend, who said to me once, who's completely like secular atheist, and she was like, we never raised our kids in it, and then one day we both thought, well, okay, maybe we better start reading them some of these stories, and then we picked it up and started reading them, and they're so horrible. Why would we, why Abraham abandons her, and so there's that take on it, and then there's where I lost my train of thought with that, and then I was going to offer a different kind of response to it. Suddenly hers sounds kind of like an ending place. But yeah, so they are, if we're not meant to do that, then what is the purpose? Some of them do sometimes, some days you wake up and that just sounds like a horrible story, and what is the purpose of it there? And there's so much ellipses. So I went back to the actual text, Hajar in Genesis, the tiny elliptical mentions of her in the Quran, and then more in the Hadith material, and tried to fill between the lines of those ellipses and gaps and lacuna, and think about how that would actually have played out. Because there's so much left unsaid, and what are we supposed to do with that, if anything? And then there's a poem here where I just ask Hagar to leave me the hell alone already. And I'm like, enough. Like, all this Middle Eastern religion is not what the world revolves around. I just want to go to, I don't know, Icelandic mythology or something else right now to fill my head. Why does it keep coming back into my head? And then the very next poem is like, no, wait, Hagar, I didn't mean it. I kind of couldn't keep her at bay for a while. So she was kind of this muse that dogged me and annoyed me and upset me. I first ran into Hagar when I was pregnant with my child, and no, it was after. I was very poor. I was a grad student. I was on like WIC, and also I felt like I had been sold a bill of goods by my family, And like, where are you now? Who's waking up at 3 a.m.? Really? Or is my cousin, can I call my cousin? And, all those people who were like, have a baby, just make sure you can and stuff, and then do your study, or what, and like, where are you now? And also, when you're on like what private doctors, and the baby looks like they're febrile seizures are completely freaking you out. And so I reread. That was my first Hagar poem, so it was about 20. Gosh, my eldest is 27, so oops. Yeah. So ever since then, yeah, she's been dogging me. I mean, what does that really feel like to watch your kid dying?
Well, it's so funny because I bring this up because I think, especially in Islamic thought and theology, Hagar is frequently invoked. Of course, we're always looking for female exemplars to invoke and talk about, but sometimes she is invoked not for the, what does
The
that
submissive
feel
wife,
like, but as
right?
the submissive wife, but also divinely obedient woman. So she's willing to undergo all of these things because of her obedience to God.
I just didn't buy that.
Yeah, so yeah.
I just never bought that because the thought of her in the desert, and Al-Azra'i's history of Mecca and Medina has this passage where she's not looking for help when she's climbing the two rocks. Like, I don't know, I'm sorry if we're talking about this whole story without actually explaining the basic story. So, okay, so it's a tiny footnote in the Bible. Abraham just leaves her by like a well, right? But in the Islamic version, which really gets pieced together really several centuries after, the Quran, it just pieced together diffusely from different materials from the biblical lore, the Israeliyat, from some of the biographies of Muhammad and so on. Anyway, so the story is that she's left there. There's no well. She's searching for the well when they run out of water in their water skins. She's searching for the well. She's searching for help from any passing caravan, and she goes between these rocks, which later come to be called Safa and Marwa, and they're part of the Hajj ritual, the Hajj or pilgrimage, which, by the way, always gets commemorated as Abraham this, Abraham that. Count the mentions of Abraham in all the different Hajj, blurbs and Facebook postings and prayers and sermons and Friday sermons and stuff, as opposed to Hajar, who really, it was all about, like, she founded the town there. There wouldn't be a town, or indeed a bunch of descendants of Islam. Yeah, Islam was the descendant of a black woman. How many times did that ever get acknowledged by Muslims? I mean.
And that the rituals that are performed in Hajj largely circle around her life and her actions and her struggle.
So the basic story. But what this one medieval historian says is that when she's up there scrounging between those boulders, she's actually not looking for help anymore. She thinks that the boy is in his death throes, and she just doesn't want to see him die. So I read that and I was really quite horrified. And there are several poems about that, and about making sense of that in a new way. Like, what that means then is that, well, I don't know, just, poetry is ambiguous. But it just means that the search for the meaning in that is, that's the cool thing about writing a poem about it. You're not saying exactly what, you're not parsing it out, because there is still so much elliptical in it. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so like that was one of the inspirations for Hagar Goes to the AIDS March. And this was written back when it was still the early 90s. The cure hadn't been found, and it was still very paranoid and very very much more homophobic than now. Not that now there's not paranoia and homophobia, but so it was like then her faith was just about acting in the here and now, in the flesh and dirt, and not about some grandiose idea of obedience. I think that's just taped on her from above.
Thank you so much. It's very wonderful. Okay, I'm going to ask one question and then open it up, one more question and open it up to everybody else who has questions. So I mentioned when I was introducing you, the girl in the tangerine scarf, and I said that it's something everyone in this room should read, and it's a wonderful weaving of identity and diversity, and especially among Muslims in America, and the complexity of negotiating that. But I think that there are other levels to this novel, and so I wonder if you can speak about some of the symbolism and motifs in that book that may not be readily apparent even to those of us who have read it or who adore it in other ways. But are there other things going on? This is maybe a loaded question.
Okay, so there are a couple of different readerships that it may speak to in some different ways. One is, there's this secret it's not a fully worked out thing. It's still quite ambiguous and open to the interpretive process is what I'm saying. It's not like there's a code to break or anything. But I hope that somebody would look at in it or pick up on the ways in which the different prayer postures, and then sujood, the prostration, the 4 or 5 different prayer postures are kind of woven into the postures of the protagonists at key moments. Okay, so that's a little layer of pleasure in it for it, just to have fun with. And then the other thing that I had a lot of fun with is, so it's set, much of it is set in Indiana. Any Hoosiers here? So, I can speak freely? No. So I did a ton of research on Indiana history, and I did live in Indiana for a few years as a child, not as long as my protagonist does. So I just totally mined all this Indiana history, and there's this whole the namings just sprinkled and threaded throughout are all of these. You could play Indiana history trivia with it, basically, and also specifically the history of various religious minorities in Indiana. Like I read about Orthodox Jews in Indiana in the 19th century. I read about, so there's this religious utopian community that was formed there in a town called Harmony, and then it kind of fell apart, and then a new Harmony was great. So I made it was the town that renamed, and then that all has to do with street names and place names, and also people's names are in there, sometimes slightly altered. Like I have a Ginny Debs. Does that ring a bell to anyone? And Eugene Debs, right, is an Indiana authors and stuff. And by the way, this is really fun stuff. So lately this summer, I've been getting a lot of communications from Indiana. Like apparently 2 weeks ago, I was like a topic at the Indianapolis Library, and they had like a discussion session, so they sent me a whole bunch of questions and stuff. So, and then this high school last May, and they taped me, and they put me in this series, taped me reading, and they put me in this series called Hoosier Authors. And I'm like, dude, I'm a Hoosier author now. So, and I gotta keep remembering that this is taped, so.
Okay. Yeah, it's live.
The really ironic thing, I mean, just on a hoot, just for a hoot, I looked up the class that I would have graduated with high school if I had continued in this little town called Plainfield, Indiana, that was very, very xenophobic in the 70s, and they had their 30th high school reunion under a Confederate flag, like still not caring who they were excluding by their signals and by their just sort of closed circle smug. I don't know. I don't know these, like, anyway, but, and then it was just kind of fun to have that, and then have a different set of people in Indiana kind of drawing me in as a Hoosier author now. I'm like, wow, maybe some of those people from that high school could run into one of these events, but I don't think so.
All right. So we want to open it up, and if you have a question, I mean, the only thing I will ask is I'll just give my standard caveat. Formulate your question. Ask it succinctly so that as many people as possible can ask questions. Okay. And if you just raise your hand, and stuff, we'll have people coming around with microphones. One of them is my lovely daughter.
And thank you to all the volunteers also.
I know people have questions. Come on. Okay, yeah.
Who inspires you? What poets, writers?
Well, so there's this Syrian poet who died in 1998, Nizar Qabbani. And, I guess for Arab literature people, it's kind of, maybe maybe some people would think it's like slightly lowbrow of me to mention him, but he really set me on fire. He's a very popular love and eros poet. Nizar Kabbani, Kabbani. And he just, I had been aware of him all my life because he's highly quoted and really popular, and, but I never really just woke up and it hit me till that year. And then I was so blown away by him. And then he died that same year. So that kind of increased my need to go back into his work and just pull out everything I could. Yeah. And then I never expected this, but starting in 2011, this generation of people in Syria. And there's a passage about this in the novel where she goes back to Syria and she sees that her aunt and uncle are shrunken and are kind of schizoid. And the very, very accomplished, amazingly accomplished Syrian short story writer, Zechariah Tamer, has said that Syrians live, this is before 2011, I mean, he said it after, but speaking of the way Syrian life was, is that Syrians live a bifurcated personality. Because it has been a police state for so long, and so there's what you can say and do and what you feel and think, and there's this whole wall of inauthenticity because you can't be what you live and really think outside, and what you say and do is always under surveillance. And so she encounters this with her aunt who is there, who is just shrunken and strangely schizoid, and anyway, and then she suddenly realizes that for all her disagreements with her parents and for all the pain of the growing up in the Midwest has produced for her, and this sense of being torn between places and lostness, but at least her parents did not stoop under that low ceiling that way and then turn into these hunched people. And then, though, I wrote this in the early 2000s and it got published in 2006, and then she notices that the youngest members of the family, her little cousins, inside the books that they're reading, they have other books that are banned books, her little teenage cousins. And she's like, so there is at least some blood left in this family. And I thought about that, and it said red blood left in this family. And then that generation is who stood up in 2011. And I asked when I was there near the refugee camps back in 2011 when nobody else, was there, and there weren't organizations or anything. And I would ask people that not the refugees, because the Turks wouldn't let us talk to them, but people who had escaped over the hills and in the woods and mountains and stuff. And I remember asking several people, okay, so how did you know you want freedom if you grew up without it? Because young people over and over would just say there was just something that just broke open when they went out and called out in the streets peaceful, non-violently that first year, and that changed them forever. And so the answer was from one young man named Ahmad. He said, being human, just being human. And so you can't smash that out of people, I guess. They amazed me. The things they came up with, they amazed me. They came up with balloon protests. Oh, this one young woman named Yaman al-Qadri, who was imprisoned and tortured for 21 days in November 2011. She was a 18-year-old student at Damascus University, and she and her friends were pissed because the senior protest organizers weren't consulting the underclass men and women, and they went and wrote freedom and human rights, just one word each on little slips of paper, thousands of them, cut up pieces of paper, took them to the top of the Damascus University dorm towers, which are the tallest buildings on campus, and just threw them. And for that, they were hunted down for 3 weeks. They were hunted for 3 weeks. I mean, it took them 3 weeks to find her, and then they imprisoned a whole bunch of her friends as well. And we were publicized, and if her case hadn't been as publicized by her cousins in Canada and other people, because that is exactly what the regime was denying, was that that this was held up and begun and organized by nonviolent protesters, and it was them that got imprisoned, that some of those names that I read that have never been let out, but the ones that were let out were violent and Islamist extremist prisoners in droves, because they wanted it to become something that they could then fight and gain, legitimacy boosts by fighting. But these young people were fighting in a new way. They were giving water bottles to the soldiers that were come to shoot them. And it was having an effect. Anyway. Thank you.
So first off, thank you. That was amazing. But my question is kind of more about like you personally in terms of like, religion and like how you kind of...
your business. No.
Well, that's what I should make a disclaimer, like it's obviously personal, but like as a woman and you're writing about all these, unique and different ideas that I never would have thought of, like I would have never put them in certain, points of view and things like that. And the general take on Islam, even when you're learning it, whether you're learning it from a scholar or from your parents, there isn't a lot of room for creativity and interpretation. You don't hear these versions of Hagar's story. You hear about great women in Islam, but my question basically is like, how do you like battle like religion with, your creative mind? Like how are you able to draw the line, like where you don't get to this point of like questioning and going crazy over like, is this the right religion? It doesn't really represent me. I have to come up with these different versions. And how do you like combine the two and complete it for yourself? Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember the name of the poet, but I guess it's not important. It's actually epigraphed somewhere in the novel where this one medieval Sufi poet says something like, don't make an idol of your manifesto after you finish your manifesto. Like there's this fetishization of Islam as a religion. Islam. You go to a NISNA conference and it's all, Islam verb this and Islam verb that and stuff. And like a Sufi poet friend of mine said, he won't go to those conferences for that because like he's interested in God. He's not interested in Islam, the religion with a capital I. So in the end, it's almost like, are you going to worship the religion, or is it about the divine? Is it about your relationship with the divine? And I don't know. So that's kind of part of what took me in that direction. Crap, I just realized that the Sarah You Bitch poem is filmed now, and it's going to be like all out of context. It's going to be... Why did you talk me into reading that? You did this.
I know it was your plan not to read it.
Right, it really was. Like I had considered it, laid it out, and then decided not to. You bad. No, I'll just, just face the, yeah. Yeah, okay. I don't need to be asked twice. I will. And the sad thing is that I don't know, where to put this or publish it or do it or anything anymore because it just seems so foregone and it all went to shit and went in so many different directions and has been hijacked in so many different ways. But this once was, and it was true. My people are rising. My people are rising. My people are rising. With olive branches and song, they are waking. The earth underneath their marching is shaking. My people are rising. They are no longer crouching. They are no longer stooping. And they are not hungry for bread alone. We don't want your bread, they said. We are hungry for more. I see their faces changing under fresh tears, mine and theirs, and some spigot in my chest just opened that has been stopped up for 48 years. And it is overspilling the ruts of the canal, irrigating our heart's dry land into wet soil. And it is shifting the shape of everything we thought we knew, because my people are lifting themselves off their knees today. I can see right into their pounding chests, and whosoever has inside themselves a mote's weight of good will see it too. فَمَنْ كَانَ عِنْدَهُ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ, and will rush out to meet it, will gather and kiss it. This spring, my people are moving. They have learned that they can move. They have legs. They can stand. They can lift the lever of the world, each man, each woman, with two bare hands. Today the people muster as if earth is convulsing in labor, and the onlookers say, "What hath it wrought? What is its matter?" And my people say, "What are these burdens that have crushed us down for 48 years? What are these towers of fear we have built over us?" And the towers collapse like carded wool. My people are rising. They are shaking off what has bound them, and their bonds scatter like moths. My people are rising. We are learning we can love, and what seemed worthless will be deemed real, and what had been scorned small will be our thorny crown. Today my people are rising. Bless them. My people carry no weapons today, because my people are banishing their fear. It returns like a beast in the night, and they banish it again, and it returns again, and they swat it like a fly. Fear once harried their faces like flies abuzz on a wine pouch, and now it flies. My men are rising, and my women are rising. My children are rising. Bless them. In 1,000 places, recorded and unrecorded, they are rising. The women began it. The children began it. And the Kurds began it. In February, schoolboys wrote on the walls of Dar'a city, "Down with the state." On March 14, 2,000 Kurds wrote in Qamishlo, "Honor our fallen." On March 15, 250 hard-working people shouted in Damascus, "Freedom, that's all." On March 16, women gathered the families of prisoners before the Justice Palace and demanded, "Release the prisoners of conscience." Women were clubbed, dragged away, one of them pregnant. And then, massive together, thousands, my people of Dar'a, rose. Into their chests on March 18, they took the first regime bullets. Bless their chests. Bless their bare arms raised. Bless their voices calling in the night at the grim sight of government trucks unloading arsenals, lobbing fire. My Sanamin, my Jize, my Inkhil are rising. These are villages. Bless them. All the nearby villages pouring into Dar'a city on March 20. Bless them. My Banyas is rising, and my Homs is rising. Bless them. My Duma is marching in the streets, and my Lat'iyya is marching. Bless them. My Qamishli was born marching. My Idlib is marching, and my Hama is marching. Bless them. I see them rising in Jebla and Raqqa and Hasake and Deir ez-Zor, and I bless them. I see them mustering unarmed Kurd and Assyrian and Arab and Ghajar. Bless them. I see them marshalling in countryside and city, and I ask you to bless them. Christian and Alawite and Druze, bless them. Sunni and Shi'i and Ismaili, bless them. Tribe and tent and house and clan, bless them. River and mountain and desert and coast, bless them. East and west and north and center, all highways headed south, seeking Dar'a, the city of Dar'a, blessing Dar'a, witnessing for Dar'a. Dara is risen. The cave is empty and the body is gone. Dara is risen and the fear is gone and life resurrected, and this is where the hope begins. I believe in the march of my people. They have stripped themselves of the armor of their fathers, my people marching bare-handed and strong. Their hands are empty and their bare hands are gleaning stalks of grain as they go. Today my people are awakening, and I ask all people to bless them. Their hearts are as broad as the surface of the moon, and their voices reach me. What is this thunder? My whispering people have become this thunder. Since I was a little girl, I have heard their hush. They have hushed all the hours of their lives, and my mother's and mine. I have listened all my life for this beautiful roar. Bless their roar. My people are rising like thunder on the knolls, and the grass is sprouting. My people are rising, a blessing on my people. They stand before tanks unarmed, and they fall under bullets while calling, the earth is big enough for all of us. Let us have a little of it too. The earth is big. And as they bleed out on the cement in the street where they played as children, their blood mixes with rain and runs off into the big, big earth for which they longed. And the young Horani said, as he lay dying that March day in Dar'a city, in the pool of rain mixed with his blood, it's worth it to have lived these last moments free. And although it was not I who cradled his head, I hear his words, and his blood runs into the soil of my dark, dark heart like the rain of this springtime in Syria. Thank you. And I almost wanted to footnote it as I went along, because each of these was an incident. Each of these was an incident that I can footnote, that I can send you to. The you know, for example, on Facebook, where I would go to check if people were okay, if they posted after the protest, or if they had been imprisoned, and if we needed to raise their names if they were in prison. I was tweeting the names that I was getting from friends in Syria of whoever had been imprisoned as their only protection. People, you know, the human rights agencies such as the Violations Documentation Center of Syria, which was founded by Syrian activists, all four of whom are now whereabouts unknown. 2 women and 2 men. I really hope that they are alive. So this someone who did 3 young men, 18, 19, and 21, died on March 18 from government live fire on unarmed protesters in Dar'a. Hussam Ayyash, Ayman Hariri, and Mohammed Jawabra. And I don't know which of them it was, but one of their friends had posted that is what he said as he lay dying in that pool of blood, which you could see in the picture. And so, for example, so each of them has the story behind it. And so they were the inspiration for every line of this. Yeah. Thank you for asking for that.
Hello? Yeah, thank you very much. Your poems sound beautiful, and your voice also. I love the way you organize the event, you know, where you make us also participate in it. That's just very special. You mentioned a list of Syrians that we should know about, and just one that caught my attention was the women of Salamiyah.
Yes.
If you can tell us a little bit about them.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
so Salamiyah is the traditional heartland of Ismaili Shiism. Like its history in Ismaili Shiism goes way back to 9th, 10th, 11th centuries. And so they were among the most active in March in the very earliest days of the revolution, and they were getting no coverage. Not even from, like, you know, the news outlets that were covering the revolution, because there was also a slant, like Al Jazeera, you know, it contributed to this transformation of it into a Sunni thing, because it didn't cover the Shia revolutionaries. So the women were organizing in nonviolent protests in so many ways, and so part of this, you know, whenever there's a militarization, that kind of both the nonviolent protesters and also the women, and the intersection of both those things get marginalized, right? So one of the things that they did, for example, was organize these amazing silent night marches. Now, the regime there, it had different tactics. Its advisors were told that if casualties were big in number, that, you know, that they needed to worry about something like Libya, because of the threatened tens of thousands of casualties that NATO went in there and whatever. So they were trying to make the casualties less of a media, less obvious, and they would scatter them. They amounted to that in the end, but they would only, in one place during 1 hour, you know, you could only kill 20 people, say. And there were other kinds of directives, which later defectors told about from the regime. So in because it was a town with a strong minority presence, and that didn't fit the myth that the regime was trying to promote as its narrative, they wanted to keep the casualties low. So they had the security line the streets, and the protest was, we just walk silently with no protest slogans, no banners, no words, we just walk. Purposely, all the way down the main strip of the town. Just imagine, you know, dozens and dozens of silent people walking, and everybody knows what it's about, but we're just walking. What are you going to arrest us for? And the security tried to taunt them and tried to... So this is just among some of the things, and the women were imprisoned. There were many of the prisoners' names that I tweeted, and like I remember a math teacher was one of them. And you can read about some of them in some of the posts from that year on Syrian Nonviolence Movement. If you go back in their photos, there's a photo called Women of Salamiyya, and it shows the woman holding the candle. Candle vigils were some of the other things that they did. So they completely bewildered and stumped the regime troops in that silent protest march. It was called "The Street Is Ours," الشارع لنا, and they did it multiple times. It was amazing. Shukran, merci, falmenderit, gracias, shukriye.
So we'll just join together to thank Dr. Koff one more time, and we will have, she'll take a brief break, and then we're going to have some refreshments and casual conversation and stuff, but let's join together to thank her one more time. As I said, there's some copies of the book in the back and some other stuff. So thank you once again.